Hello and welcome to the big picture, a day ahead of the Union Budget 2015. We are seated to try and understand what are the clear signals that are emerging, what does industry want, what do the markets want, what does business want indeed from this most exciting moment. I'm joined here in Mumbai by two gentlemen, K. Nandakumar, Chairman of the CII Western Region Subcommittee, which also represents the small and medium enterprises, a very critical segment as we go ahead into the Union Budget from a business perspective. Also joining me equally critically, Kunj Bansal, Chief CIO of Centrum Broking, Chief Investment Officer, who obviously is going to tell us about the markets. Also joining me in our Delhi studio, Priyaranjan Dash, a senior journalist and policy analyst who's going to give us the context, and particularly after the economic survey that released today, and let's try and understand what signals we can pick from that. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today. So let me begin with you, Mr. Nandakumar. So there is a lot of expectation. There was a sense that this government is really thinking about the small guy, the small business, the small trader, and so on, and obviously wanting to make them big. Are you in sync with that? And if so, what are your broader expectations?
Absolutely. It is because we have projected that we should have 25% of the manufacturing share in the GDP by 2022. If that is to happen, which means 11 to 12% year-on-year growth, it can only be done through the energization of SMEs, because SMEs contribute nearly 45% of the manufacturing, 40% of the exports, and also contributes more than 8,000 products and 50% of the employment. In terms of total GDP, it is 37%, 30% for service and 7% today. So if we have to be by 2022, we are looking around 15%. So SME is the growth engine.
Right.
Certainly.
Right.
No doubt.
Okay. So we'll come back to that. Kunj, as the markets are already looking very strong, they were up 473 points. I'm talking about the BSE Sensex. It's already sort of racing to some expected figure or target. The question now, of course, is will it sustain?
So you know, if I start in a lighter vein, I'm reminded of the days when Sachin Tendulkar used to play cricket, and every time he'll come in the ground, people would expect him to score a century. Yeah. I think little bit like this is the condition of the present government, that every time it comes up with a parliament session or a policy announcement or a cabinet meeting, and recently railway budget survey and tomorrow general budget, the expectations are that it should keep delivering, which is practically impossible. Let's be realistic about it. Having said that, obviously there are a lot of expectations because those have been built by this government itself and nobody else. Let's also be clear, or very clear on that. If I take railway budget as a clue, I think the way the general budget is going to be presented is that it will of course have some measures which will be immediate, but a larger focus on medium to slightly long-term planning is spanning over 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Within that, I think specifically there is a general expectation, especially from market point of view, if I talk, that there will be a focus on investment, domestic investment, as government has said, make in India, employment generation and all.
Right, and the railway budget's also given some directional sort of indication there, saying that the railways themselves will be.
Yeah, infrastructure, I think, which is already very popularly known and has been discussed widely, is the sector which is going to be a large focus area.
Okay, and is there a sense that there should be something specific for the markets themselves?
There are a lot of talks going on about the taxation changes and service tax being raised in preparation for GST coming in. GST itself, date of implementation to be announced. Of late there have been talks of capital gains, either time frame or the rates being changed. STT is always something which gets talked every time, that it will be hiked or lowered. Commodity transaction tax is yet another thing. So a lot of things, but
there are no specific or major expectations there. I think the market is not riding on that. Market is riding on the larger economic sense of well-being.
Yes, I think market is looking at two critical things. One, of course, the deficit numbers.
Yeah.
And two, the investment focus.
Right. So, and do you feel the survey gave you a sort of sense there? I mean, the deficit being targeted now much lower at 4.1.
Yes, survey has clearly given a sense, especially there is, a talk has started of a double-digit GDP growth rate. Yeah. Now, that's of course based on the new method of calculation, but that itself speaks about the thinking probably which is going on in the corridors of power in the government as well as in bureaucracy.
Right. So 3% fiscal deficit target, 4.1% in the next year. So things look like they headed in the right direction. Priyaranjan Dash, how do you see it? I mean, what's the walk us through the backdrop? I mean, where were things lined up, or how were things lined up ahead of this budget and as we now prepare for tomorrow?
Well, as the economic survey says, time is ripe for. Hello, can you hear me?
problem getting Priya there. Okay, let me come back to you, Mr. Nandakumar. So you were saying that one of the things that you're expecting is that the budget will of course sort of help ease things up. Let's separate that into two or three areas. So one is, let's say, the structural reforms. Okay. The second could be, let's say, monetary, in the sense that you get interest rates and you get better sort of financing and so on. And the third could be just the sort of procedural ease of doing business. What would you place more emphasis on?
As far as SME is concerned, today the finance, of course, is the biggest, because the liquidity is very, very important for small industries. Unless the MSMED Act 2006 is really put into practice, and that SMEs are paid within 45 days time, they will have sustainability issue. So this is the biggest challenge. All other things, including the cost of money, affordable cost of money, can come later. But the fundamental fact is they have to be paid on time. This has to be mandated by an act of parliament, though it is already there, or at least put a mechanism by which robust monitoring is done. That is very, very essential. Along with that,
who could monitor? Are you saying the banks themselves, or?
No. The government themselves can monitor.
But is that feasible?
It is possible through the system. I would say, in fact, Reserve Bank is bringing up some trading platform by which those people who cannot. There is another issue to that. By 2015 April, as per MSMED Act 2006, 20% of the procurement has to be from SME mandated.
Right.
So if that has to happen, this system has to be in place, the payment schedule within 45 days. So for that, Reserve Bank also is bringing up some trading platform by which the SMEs can be traded.
Right. Okay. I think we've got Priya Ranjan back. Priya, I was asking you to take us or walk us through the backdrop to this Union Budget 2015, 9 months after this new government came in.
Now, like the survey itself has indicated, international conditions are conducive for Indian economy to grow. And nationally, we have a new government with a clear mandate in 30 years for a single party. So the survey itself says that the time is opportune for big bang reforms. And it also says that in a couple of years' time, it should be possible for India to get back, or to rather achieve a double-digit growth rate. So that being the backdrop, there are many things. At most of the times, the link between an economic survey, which is an economist view of what are the right things to do, and a budget or actual implementation, which depends on the practicality of doing things, that link is often tenuous. But in today's context, and with the background in which the budget is going to be presented, I would say that there is a very strong linkage between the recommendations or the prescriptions which have been made in the economic survey and what we might see tomorrow. So in that sense, there are very important statements which have been made in the economic survey which are bound to be reflected in the budget tomorrow. And indeed, during this budget session of Parliament as such, where, as we know, there are very important legislative business which is to be conducted, arising out of the ordinances in very important area of economic reforms that the government has already issued, and those needs to be enacted during the. And those needs to be.
Priya, what's the one thing or one or two things you feel could really stand out, or will reflect this sort of majority you spoke of and the sheer size of mandate that this government has come in with?
See, if you look at the subsidy, the major subsidies themselves, that is the food subsidy, the fertilizer subsidy, and the producer subsidy, you may say, to the farmer in the form of minimum support price, that is, and the procurement price. Now, if you look at these major subsidies, as the survey argues, all these some 3,75,000 crore actually have not been properly targeted, and the effectiveness of this subsidy to act as anti-poverty solutions or to raise the living standard of people have been very doubtful. Now, the survey indicates that there is a scope for a paradigm shift in this area. So, looking at that, one should expect the rationalization of this entire service regime, the subsidy regime, I would say. So that is one of the most important area which one would see transformational change.
Right, Priya. Hold your thought there. So let's come back to we talked about the specific issues that the MSME, and we'll come back to that again. Very broadly, subsidies, deficit, the budgeting of the whole government in that sense. What are the larger signals you're looking for, Mr. Nandakumar?
One is, of course, the GST coming into the in place.
Right. Yeah, in some ways I would add GST to the list, that, if we can tackle subsidies with the iron hand and of course get GST going.
Then of course some of the financial reforms in terms of the insurance and in terms of the taxation benefits, direct taxation benefits to the industries as well as the common man, that will certainly help quite a lot.
Right. So GST specifically, and Kunj, I'm going to ask you this as well. Are you getting a sense that, this has been there in the offing for a while, right? And we've seen several statements and several statements of intent. Now, what is the next step that you'd expect that a budget could specifically give or provide in the context of GST?
Well, they have to make I believe, a constitution amendment bill for that. Yeah. That has to be made into this. And then they have to bring in the infrastructure to roll out that across the country. That is the biggest challenge for this.
So you're saying the blueprint is what perhaps is missing
absolutely,
as of now.
Yes.
Kunj, I mean, so the markets are obviously looking ahead to a lot of things. But what's the sense you're getting that either could work or could not work, at least from a execution point of view for this budget?
So a lot of talks, as you rightly said, has been going on, but at the same time, market is also aware that a lot of legislative reforms outside of budget may not be that easy to be carried through. For the obvious reasons that the government doesn't have majority in the Rajya Sabha, and opposition would obviously not be too keen to, although they might be their policies itself. So to that extent, while market is expecting, because expectation costs nothing, but at the same time, market being realistic also is aware that it may not be easy. I think what market is banking more upon are the administrative reforms, which are well within the powers of the government, of the cabinet, where it has absolute majority to carry out that. And within that, as we discussed earlier, that focus on infrastructure and investment. That will obviously lead to your own employment generation, your make in India, your growth rates going up, your overall demand going up, consumption going up. So I think that's where the key focus is going to be.
Right. So let me ask you the other market question, and I'll come back to you. What about more equity? I mean, more paper in the market. Is there expectation of more privatization, more disinvestment? I mean, I know we have a target of about 50,000 crores, which is still getting rolled over. But are you expecting more, or is the market expecting more?
Not really, especially going by the, as you rightly said, track record of the current financial year. So to that extent, I don't think market is expecting big bang divestment. Also for the reasons that the oil price reduction has resulted in government able to save on the subsidies. So to that extent, I don't think market is banking too much upon divestment.
So you're saying that the markets therefore are working quite well and happily today, and there's enough supply of either paper or capital on the other side?
Yes, and beyond budget, so market obviously budget is one thing, which is of course main thing, but market is also banking upon the interest rate reduction. Right. So that will be not in the powers of central government, that will go to RBI, but that is where I think market is now banking upon this.
Right, and if there is a link, as Priya says, or a greater or a stronger link between the economic survey and the budget, the interest rate clamor could perhaps turn into some reality, not in the budget of course, but a little later. Mr. Nandakumar.
Yeah. My take is that the given situation, the government should look at disinvestment of the public sector, non-performing public sector, because oil price is down, Sensex is good, and this reform can be done without much complexities of the parliament, whether they have majority or not. This disinvestment, that will give a direct signal to the industry, to the market, if they do, and they can generate enough money. Where I believe this is the best opportunity for the government to do, disinvestment of the non-performing public sectors to generate money.
Right. So disinvestment of non-performing public sector units should be a focus or a thrust area in the budget, is what Mr. Nandkumar says. We'll take a break here, but coming back after the break, we're going to talk about some of the key challenges ahead in the union budget, including, of course, how much of those promises could be really implemented. Stay with us. Welcome back to the big picture. The Union Budget 2015 is tomorrow, and we are trying to divine and indeed also project what could happen and what is more likely to happen given the kind of trends that we've been seeing set by both the railway budget as well as the economic survey. Priya Ranjan Dash and Mr. Nandkumar here with me in Mumbai. So Priya, let me come back to you, right? So one of the questions that's being asked is that you had an election in Delhi recently. Did that or could that have changed some of the priorities for the government in particularly the way it will manage subsidies and sort of allied expenditures?
Absolutely. If you go by the economic survey, it does. And the economic survey, in fact, makes a very convincing case as to, for instance, the Aam Aadmi Party promise, and subsequently they have also announced the implementation of giving electricity, for instance, at a subsidized price. Now, the subsidy on things like electricity is regressive. That is a very convincing case that the economic survey makes. So that being, if that is the approach that the central government, the union government is going to take, and bring about, when we talk about rationalization subsidy, we are actually talking about governance. This is more governance issues than anything else. See, in a country like ours, subsidies are, cannot be whisked away. The elimination of subsidy is neither desirable nor feasible. So that being the case, the approach has to be how to reach the subsidies at the targeted people effectively. So the same old question of our developmental paradigm that, where we spoke about every rupee spent by the government, only 15 paise was reaching the target. Now, that kind of a issue is the governance issue. So that when one talks about rationalization of subsidy, one is talking about bringing about improvement in that because by now it is clear that the whole regime has been inefficient, leaking, and it has not brought about the benefits that it has brought about. Number one. Number two is that it's important if you have to achieve a certain degree of fiscal consolidation that is very essential, because number one, for macroeconomic stability, and even for things like to keep inflation under check, because the government, the more the government borrows, that's going to push up the interest rates, crowd out the private sector investors from the market, and would also, be inflationary. So if you want that fiscal consolidation to take place, and for that, it's important that you also look at such governance issues as wasteful subsidies and try and bring about certain savings in there. Now, the kind of governance solutions which
for a moment. Yeah. So Right. Priya, just hold it there. Sudhir Kapadia, Head of Tax for Ernst & Young, joins us. Sudhir, sorry we couldn't get you in earlier. So we're obviously trying to understand, one day before the budget, with all the smoke signals that have already emerged from the railway budget and the economic survey, one of the critical areas, and the survey also talks about, is administrative tax reform. Walk us through what your key sort of focus areas are ahead of the budget, both from an administrative point of view and, of course, what you would expect in real tax terms.
Right. So, Govind, taking administration first, right? The key issue is dispute resolution. Now, there are two aspects to it. One is avoidance of disputes itself. You can't eliminate them, but at least, avoid a majority of them. And two is where they do arise, how do you resolve them as quickly as possible? Now, I think in the last budget itself, some welcome announcements were made. So, for example, rollback of APAs, for example, strengthening of AARs, that is Authority for Advanced Ruling, settlement commissions, AARs for domestic transactions. Where we have found it challenging is the speed of implementation of those announcements. And there is a talent shortage as well, is what we reckon. It's not easy to get the right people for doing all this. So I think the first thing which business will look forward to, industry will look forward to, is the walk the talk on all those announcements on dispute resolutions. That's one part of it. I think the second related part of it is how do you ensure that unnecessary or frivolous disputes don't arise? Again, steps have been taken, circulars have been issued. Now, despite that, there have been, for example, the attempt to levy MAT on private equity funds, on FIIs. I don't think the intent of MAT was ever this.
So we're also running out of time. Very quickly, anything specific expectation on the actual tax numbers?
So on the tax ones, if you ask me, this is the budget where a roadmap can be laid down. What is the roadmap? The roadmap is, like other countries have done, should there be more moderate corporate tax rates, but also lower, number of exemptions. Today, the profit-linked exemptions have remained on paper in many cases, in most cases perhaps, because there have been disputes, interpretations. So, for example, if we remove the surcharges and make the corporate rate 30%, but also rationalize some of these exemptions which corporates enjoy today, I think a larger number of corporate sector entities will benefit. And there will be also augmentation of tax revenues.
Right. So, okay. So, one is that. Anything on the personal side?
So before personal, I think the other is MAT, right? The whole debate on MAT. Certainly on SEZs, it has been a huge promissory estoppel. And that is something which needs to be looked at. It should be removed. On the personal side, the simple point is that whether you can leave more money in the hands of individuals. That's the main thing.
And that can be done, you feel?
That can be done, yes.
Okay, we've run out of time. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Sudhir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Nandakumar. That's all we have on time for on the big picture. We, of course, await the 2015 Union Budget. Be there with us. Thank you for watching.